thank you so much for coming to our ninth hug, our first of 2024. Thank you so much for being here. As you guys know, Glenn will be our speaker. Today's topic will be custom properties you should be using on deals. Again, if at any point during today's hug you have any questions, please feel free to even just come off mute or raise your hand with that little icon you see at the bottom of your screen, or simply just type it in the chat and Glenn will sort of get to it either during the discussion, the hug, or potentially at the end. So to introduce Glenn, the Director, Growth Strategy, Customer Experience, HubSpot Certified Professional Trainer and CEO of Lupo Digital. Now handing over to Glenn to start today's hug and go through today's agenda. So thanks, guys.
Nemos, thanks so much. So guys, custom properties on deals is quite a difficult arena because the nature of custom means it should adapt around each business and the use case and presenting a use case for customization. So the first thing I'll just dabble into, and just by way of the agenda today, is just kind of a 101, a high-level overview of custom properties versus standard properties and why custom properties. We'll jump into the different custom property types, and then we'll look at scenarios or exceptions, should I say, for custom properties. We'll then pivot to the impact of custom properties on reporting, followed by a wrap-up. We have included quite a lot of bonus material because it's quite a big topic that I think some might benefit from how we've put together that bonus material. And then we'll jump into your Q&A for those on the call, and hopefully a couple more jump on right at the end. So without further ado, we can get the engine started and jump straight into it, guys. So I think the first golden question is, why a custom property? And there's always distraction with a video like this, but if you read the caption at the top there, it's saying, clients, when I explain to them, we are not going to create custom HubSpot properties, but instead we're going to use the default ones. So this is an awesome meme that Nemo and I love. Like you don't need the 3 first name fields, and always check, if you actually need a custom property. So I think stating the obvious here and just looking at the picture that's on the screen there, the golden question on why a custom property, we have certain use cases with businesses that are clients of ours who, in a picture you're seeing here, might have multiple pipelines. And in their instance, they need multiple pipelines, but I've had clients on the other side of that where they didn't actually need multiple pipelines. What they needed was a custom property to reflect the need for that type or customization rather than using an entire pipeline. So I think the golden question is, assuming you've taken HubSpot's, you've got knowledge around HubSpot's out-the-box standard properties. You've worked with those, you've used those, you've tried to edit those, and they just haven't cracked the nut for you. You've got a team biting back, or your role demanding that for whatever the purpose is, in deals specifically, the nature of today's hug, you need to create a custom property because you don't have the option. And I suppose my goal is, it's a bit challenging and difficult today because every business has a different need, is to try and expose you to a lot of use cases in a short amount of time that let you see how we've resulted solutions using custom properties on deals specifically for a variety of business. And so what I've done is I've categorized my presentation more on a category level than an actual use case, but giving you a whole bunch of options so that hopefully we're exposing you to what you might not know. So I think the first thing also is how you're planning your HubSpot use case. And so you don't want to just leap in and go create custom properties. You always kind of want this test and audit mentality where if the business is suggesting custom property use case, you really want to first go into HubSpot and become the master. If you're the champion or you have someone in the entity that can be the HubSpot champion, that they're across all your properties in general, the stock standard ones. If you've inherited a platform, what legacy properties exist there? And then if there isn't something that checks the boxes, really ask yourself, I want to plan out that if I had this property I need, is there definitely no other way I could do this in HubSpot? Basically, as a segue then, I wanted to just hit into the lack of pipeline knowledge. So the other thing I'm suggesting is custom properties relate to a deal. A deal lives in a pipeline. I get this question a lot. Why do I need another pipeline? Before we talk custom properties on deals. And the reality is that comes down to a process. So a good example is if you have regular customers and you have a sales pipeline for your wares, your products, your services, the golden question why you would need another pipeline, for example, is if you also had a partnership program. And so you might have industry affiliates that you partner up with and they're going to help sell your products. But maybe the pipeline of how those sales come through your partnerships are a completely different series of steps in your sales process. And so you might have a partnerships manager, and their steps in how they close a partner or close a sale to a partner are very different to your normal sales process, because it's not the end customer. And so in that instance, you might have a separate pipeline. So just leveraging the image on the screen there, the specific business using multiple pipelines in this case have a very specific payment requirement in billing clients over a few years actually. And so in their world, they want to report differently, and therefore they've structured the way their pipelines are choreographed differently. So often there's three things you need to consider in your planning before you just jump out and build custom properties. One is, if we're working with the end in mind, sometimes you need to build custom properties to result the right level of reporting, because as we know in HubSpot reporting, you can use properties to filter. So you might want specific custom properties to give you a deeper dimension on reporting, which out the box HubSpot didn't include because it didn't know your use case before the platform was set up for you to use, for example. And what I'm going to do now, if we understand that we've developed a use case for a custom property, right? HubSpot's not doing it. What's there doesn't do it. And I'll just convey an example as a segue. So, looking at the slide on your screen here, I wasn't going to include the sub bullet points for each of these property types, I'm calling them, in terms of custom properties, because I just thought it's too much information. But on the contrary, each of the sub bullet points on this list, which we're going to go through, are a variety of use cases that you might say, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about the timing of my deals. And so some of the options Glenn's overviewed might actually apply to me. And if you grab one, I've done my job today in helping. So at the top of this list, what I'm going to do is expose what I'm calling custom property, the type of custom properties you might need. And I'll put them into these black bullet points here as we go through a little bit of a list. So the first thing in terms of deal type, this is a property out the box that is a HubSpot deal property for new business and existing business. So if you've got a deal in your pipeline, this is a way you could have filtered or established a difference between net new sales or new business or new deals relative to existing customers. And we've had use cases with clients, as you see in the little screenshot in the middle there, where they've actually made this property their own. So the notion of customizing a deal property doesn't mean you need to create a new one. It could mean you just edit the ones that you've inherited from HubSpot. And sometimes you just want to put the existing ones maybe at the bottom of the list in case you're still trying to prove a use case. And sometimes you might want to add, as you see on the example here, like truck or motorcycle, it represents the type of deal sale here. Maybe this business is selling a motorcycle versus selling a truck. In the case of education, you might have different courses. And so you might have a course A and then course B. And this is how you could filter how many deals in the pipeline. Show me the total value for course A versus course B. So the notion there is really customizing the properties you already have. The second one on the list now is product category related. And I'm using this as a bit of a catch-all. Now, this is also interesting because in HubSpot, there are two tools not everyone knows about. And certainly when I mention this to clients, there's a product and inventory tool in HubSpot, a library where you can upload your products. And so if you have a set amount of courses, in the case of education that you sell, you might have 10 courses and they have a fixed price. And so in your deal pipeline, when you securing a student, you would just add each line item onto a deal and HubSpot would tally up the total. And so your deal has its own new value, which would replace the value in the normal amount column automatically. And a lot of businesses don't know about those product line items, would you believe? Secondly, the HubSpot then has a further third tool, which is a quote tool. And those line items are available as product line items on a quote level as well. And so some businesses just use product line items on a deal level, and some take it a notch further by configuring the quote tool and then getting those line items on a quote level so they can use the quote parts of HubSpot. And why this is important for today is those three things, the deal products, or how we represent products on a deal, using the actual product library on quotes. And then within quotes, you have a deeper level of functionality, which out the box offer properties that if you're not using it, you wouldn't have been aware of in HubSpot. For example, payment, and we'll look at these shortly, a whole bunch of payment options. So you have, the average lifetime value of a customer based on the quote that you're preparing might have a specific average value, or the average value of sales. And some of those custom properties around amounts already exist in HubSpot if you were using them in the quote tool. If you're not using them in the quote tool, we've had certain instances of customers creating them on a deal level. So in terms of the third one on the list here then, and if you can imagine some of those properties I've just mentioned on a product level appearing on a deal, then some of those product related things might start to impact timing. So first and foremost, it leads me to the type of custom properties revolving around timing, relating on deal dates. So the second bullet point on this list, expected close date, is out the box with HubSpot. If you put a close date in of when you hope to secure this sale as won or lost, then that's the date you're using. We've had other instances where businesses create a need for priority based on a date. So for this particular use case, perhaps there's a need to close the sale. Maybe it's a house or a property sale on a priority date. And that, if it's put in there, you could create automations around such a field. The next one might be the start date. So we've got instances where a particular contract commences on date X. And so if this deal goes ahead, that date works with a close date and the priority date where they influence one another. And again, you might need to lock in time. What is the start date for that project to commence? Hence the deal. What date should that deal close so that the start date could be achieved? We also have completion or collection dates. So again, if you work in an administrative team at an education provider or in an accounts department, collection date might be really important for you because of when you get your money. Your completion date could be projects or project management type related businesses, project management completion dates. And then other instances of renewal or period of some sort that are applicable, and you might want a date to represent that. So I think in the way of just 5 bullet points there, it gives you a real good overview of some dates you might want to think about that could impact reporting and that you could leverage to achieve certain things that maybe out the box HubSpot hasn't helped you do. Then we just move to amount or fee or finance related fields. So I've covered some of these already, but again, in terms of a use case, we might have a particular business that sells sponsorships, and they might sell sponsorship that spans over 3 years. And so the screenshot you saw just before is where these different pipelines kick in. And another way we could do it is having different amounts for each product on a line item basis. But when it comes to collecting monies or based on the amounts, so I think as I'm describing it here and just pulling together some of the things I just conveyed, you can see this is a screenshot of the quote tool where if you had set up your products as I've described, you could start to see the billing start date drop menu there, where you could put a custom date in. And this is where I'm referring to a date that lives in HubSpot, but you might bring that onto a deal level. But if you want the functionality of total, at the top of the screen, you're seeing a whole bunch of totals for monthly recurring revenue, average recurring revenue. If those check your boxes, tickle your fancy in the language that HubSpot use out the box, you could lean on those type of amount-based fields. And on the bottom of the screenshot, you're just seeing in the bottom right corner that if you are taking payment terms over a number of years, or in your world over a few months, but you're taking part payments, that's where you're seeing each of these rows, 15,000 on the 29th of February, 15,000 on the 31st. And this is a prime example of the sponsorship company I was referring to, where even though they have sponsorships they're selling over a 3-year term, they can see the monies that they're collecting in. And at the same time, on a deal level, they have the amounts being tracked in averages, as I've mentioned at the top of that screen. So Nimrod, I'm going to ask you to just backtrack a few slides to pick up where we left off. There we just one before that one. So just on the ownership level, we also have certain businesses where you might have a tag team working in sales. So you've got maybe a business development or administrative type individual, and then you've got a sales rep or a business consultant who actually gets the doing done. They go to appointments. So you might have, it's pretty self-explanatory, but you might have the need for different deal owners, not necessarily contact or company owners, but deal owners. And again, in reporting, you might say, John, who's in administration, you have as the primary deal owner, and then Chris or Sarah is the secondary deal owner, and I want to report a whole bunch of metrics separately. This would allow you to do so. And then you might have the need for other activity related type of fields like last contacted or last engaged. Out the box, those exist in HubSpot on a deal level, but you might want to add varieties of those in terms of some businesses are not using the prospecting workspace in HubSpot, the newly launched feature of lead management. Some businesses are not using the tasks tools. And so some of the fields that exist in those tools, if you're not using them, you might want to bring them onto an activity level. So you might have a custom need for task created and literally create a custom property for task created, yes or no. You could even have individual to do as the owner of that task and bring those onto the custom properties in a deal, so that again you can assign those to people through workflows or do them on that level. And then other properties around deal source. So this is obviously very important, mortgage broking, even education. How did the deal arrive in HubSpot? Is there an actual human who referred a customer? Perhaps at the beginning of the call, we're talking to Adrian about referral programs. So maybe you actually need to put a human's name in. Who referred this deal? There's also native HubSpot properties. A new one that launched in the last 3 months or so is on every contact company deal, on every object or record in HubSpot. We now have a record source. So you may not have known that, and you may have a source property you created on deals, which HubSpot now does. And then you've obviously got the automated ones through integrations or your email extension for later source, original source, which would also include things like Facebook advertising, for example, or SEO, organic search. Moving along then into the integrations world. So a lot of businesses are integrating platforms like Zoom, Xero for accounting, or in the education space, specific providers like Accelerate or Vasto, but integrations are large. And so sometimes you want that integration data, which is custom in nature. It's coming through an integration that wasn't part of HubSpot. And so you have the ability to change your view on the left sidebar and put those custom properties onto a section called integration, for example. You might want your client code over there, which you don't have to input manually into HubSpot. And then finally, it's just specific use cases to your industry. So hopefully I've brought a variety of properties into the conversation for you today. And hopefully it allows you to just apply some of the list of these bullet points and task property types into your universe. Certainly, if any of these check boxes, you're not sure how they work, please do reach out to me. But I think most importantly, the devil is hiding, as you see on the blue there at the bottom of the screen, in the detail, where you should just plan, audit your system, plan the need for custom properties, workshop that a little bit. If you need to put custom properties into existing properties and test that for a while, I recommend it before you just leap into a whole bunch of custom properties to make your workspace a bit dirtier. So let's assume now we have created a variety of custom properties. Maybe the integrations one is a good example. What I'd like you to see is, firstly, this is an image of a deal, and it's obviously an Acme sales pipeline. But at the bottom here, you see, and a lot of businesses say to me, wow, I just didn't realize this. But on the bottom, we've got our black sections for about this deal, document checklist, sales team, welcome pack. And so if you want to clump a variety of custom properties together, put them in a section, you can jump into your HubSpot settings on a deal level, create the sections, move the respective properties or custom properties into the sections. And so the different teams working, with these sections can now just click the green drop menu arrow on the left and see all the properties that relate to that section. And I think that's quite important, because a lot of people who haven't used custom properties may not realize that once you start creating custom properties, it's probably a deep need, and you want to clump that need into a heading or a list that everyone understands. These custom properties now exist in that section. Another scenario or use case then on top of the need for sections is, we've got certain clients that actually have stock and they want to pre-sell that stock, but they don't yet have a contact that they've sold it to. So they'll do their prospecting for a home or a property, for example, maybe a home builder who has a big site. They've got 10 homes that they want to sell on those sites, but they need to find buyers, then assign the buyers to the lot or the home number, and then move it through their pipeline. And so in that instance, they also have an inventory. It cost them X to build the 10 lots, and they know that the cost to build a house, and if it's a house A, B, C, D, they have different costs. And so we've got a use case where they might pre-program, as you see in the screenshot on the right, each property with its respective information in custom properties, and then they will assign a contact as a couple, maybe a husband and a wife, even a company if it's a B2B scenario, to the deal once that's known, and then move it into the moving ahead column where things really get started. So most pipelines don't have that need, but it's just, there are opportunities in every property. They just got to find a buyer for them. And so if you're a buyer's agent, or even in education, you had limited seats at a course, but you wanted to pre-sell them or pre-allocate them, you just needed to find the buyers. That's the way you can do it. Is leaning back on what I was saying. So if you're not using the quote tool, it's just some screenshots of where you could do custom property. So in an example of the screenshot you're seeing on your right, it's a little bit small, but it says cost center with a drop menu in blue, where it says work, S1 sponsorship, advertising, XYZ. So even if you have different cost centers and you're a bigger business, B2B, or you're in education, I suppose, and some courses have a different cost center, that's a way you could do it on a quote level or on just a deal level as a custom property. The screenshot on the bottom right is another example that heavily hinges. We see a lot of custom properties around payments, where a business doesn't want to use the quote tool, but they do want a variety of payment fields. So I thought it would just be interesting to bring that in so you can actually see how that applies. You can add things like discounts, you can add things like billing frequency. And I suppose, again, the pro tip is the most successful deal setup is often the simplest, but in its nature. So again, the planning is essential to get all of this right, and the testing. And if you're creating an abundance of fields, you don't need to delete those if they're no longer in use. We've kind of covered this, so I'm going to tiptoe right over that one, and we can jump then into the reporting side of things. So what I wanted to do, again, reporting is 100% reliant upon the custom properties that are created. And so this part is a little bit more conceptual than anything else, because let's assume you have all your custom properties now. I always like to work with an end in mind. So if I'd said to you coming into the session today, was there a particular report that you would like to see, but you kind of feel hamstrung by HubSpot because you don't really know where to get that data from? Or maybe there's a combination of 3 properties that you would use. And I'll give you an example. Maybe you want to result a report that has a dollar amount. But as I said, you have to actually add motorcycles and trucks into a deal level so that you can then report total value of motorbike sales versus total value of trucks. And then you want to actually calculate them. So you might need a third property as a custom property in HubSpot to facilitate your calculate field as a calculate property. And so you might result for trucks, do the calculation on a new custom property called truck calculation, and that would result $100. And now you need to display the $100 in a separate field because you just want to use that field as an outcome on reporting. So you could use the custom calculate property itself on a report, but you could also use the third report. And then there's a layer of automation. Obviously, you might want to add on top of all of that to ultimately use the automation to deliver fields onto a reporting level. So if I've lost you guys or those watching, please do reach out if that doesn't make absolute sense. But what I've just done here is shown you that whether you're running bar charts or you want to use, a goal versus result versus forecast report, like the top right image there, where you've got a line that might be your goal, where the colors on the bar charts are your actuals. You want to kind of see, right, how do we do relative to the goal? And you could even have a third line for forecasting. So if you're not using HubSpot's forecasting tool, but you can populate in your forecasts, you might want to do that as an import with a field called sales forecast, and then show those separate lines on a resulting report, which all of which you can do. And then even on the bottom, just a bit more complexity, that out the box, a HubSpot standard sales report might just give you one bar chart line there, but you actually want to compare that to variable A, B, C, D. Having those custom properties as variables B, C, D, E let you then represent them visually on a report. And obviously today's not about reporting. There's some complexity to setting up the report itself, but as long as you've got the underlying properties, you can kind of make that work, as we know. Kind of wrap up by saying, firstly, consider the custom property group shared and considering your HubSpot instance. I think it's important to understand the range of custom properties you might need, build the use case, do some reporting as a test, and then as you kind of learn what works, what doesn't, go back and tweak, remove, add new, rinse, repeat until you kind of have your ecosystem working with custom properties on deals as you need. And obviously you might realize, hey, I've been doing everything as a separate pipeline, but if I brought that in as custom properties instead, it's much less complicated, it's simple, and I can report much easier on it without a huge layer of complexity around other deal pipeline stages that might exist. Yeah, and so I think by way of kind of the wrap up today, it's a segue into what we would all anticipate. So it's very interesting in the age of AI where we find ourselves now. The way I've conveyed today is not really what AI would have suggested. So Nimrod, as you scroll through these slides, I'll just kind of tiptoe over the bonus material we're giving you in the slide deck after today's hug. You could just go through each of these slides. You'll see that if one was to go into AI and literally ask ChatGPT 4.0 for custom properties and everything I need to know and what I should consider, we've done that for you. And so each of these slides Nimrod is scaling through is just giving you an overview that if you run that exercise and you just want the basics, I suppose it's 101 on how to think about custom properties, what things to expect, even where in HubSpot, as you see on the screen now, to do these things. We've put in a great list of resources to help get you on your way. If you want to just do your own homework before contacting someone like us to help you if that's what you need. But as you can see, Michael's questions, so two things, guys. We polled the audience in terms of what exactly you'd like us to cover as topics. This one was the favorite. And what's interesting is I think everyone has the intention in their lunch break to arrive, but it's not always possible. So we always get a lot of interest after the hug, and especially the consumption of these slides. So in Michael's example, just to mention that his use case was around custom properties for prospecting. And what that tells me in his request is that he may not be aware of the prospecting workspace, or if he is, it may not work for him. So he might want to start leveraging, HubSpot's lead status property to start using that instead. But it's not really a deal related thing until we've established best fit, we've qualified a prospect, and the prospects ask for a price, and we're now ready to give them a quote. And that's kind of when it should jump into your pipeline in the first place. And I suppose a lot of your questions, as you see on the bottom of the screen there, around qualification and reporting, once you're ready to quote someone, they're an opportunity, and you'd create that in your pipeline, and then you just lean on the pipeline amounts. If you're a SaaS product as you are, and you need to break down those SaaS products, as I mentioned earlier on today's slide deck, then certainly you can report on all of them. So I just wanted to be clear again, a lot of what I've said today is around understanding the tools you have in HubSpot, and I'd say they're built with functionality baked in already. And so it's helpful if you understand those tools, that maybe you don't need custom properties. Those tools will get it done for you, things like the task tools and some of the others I've mentioned. But if you do have a need, then if you don't have a need for those tools, but you do have a need for some of those products, then you can quite easily just bring them onto a deal level and start reporting straight away. So I know it's just at the moment, Adrian and Joanna, just opening it up for any questions, insights at all around today's content. Adrian, I see you've got your hand up there. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. That was great.
Thanks so much,
Adrian.
Just a very quick question, and it's very detail oriented, but when you were showing the slide with, I guess, the Kanban sort of with the pipeline, yeah, that one there, right?
Yes.
So we've obviously implemented, maybe not so obviously implemented, a number of custom properties on deals. What I'd love to know is where you've got property one highlighted in the picture.
Yes.
So that's the deal name, I'm guessing. But then you've got
Correct.
two properties underneath that kind of come as like a preview on the card.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, is there a way to actually determine which properties are surfaced on the cards?
Yes.
Okay.
Before I confirm, I'm just doing a quick sticky beak, but on the settings in HubSpot, just because as you know, they're launching about 180 new microservices a month.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, and it's just not my screen that's sharing.
That's okay.
But on a pipeline level, if you are in your deals pipeline, on the top right hand side of the screen, and if we can't solve this, Adrian, we can always take it offline.
Sure.
You've got the board options view, which I'm assuming and the edit cards. And to the best ability possible, that's where I recall you will be able to take control of that.
Is that in settings or is that on the actual?
No, it's actually on the board. So, but if you can relinquish screen share, I will share mine quickly. Adrian, some of these features are sometimes enterprise, so test pipeline, so it's fine. But basically over here, board options and then edit cards. And on an enterprise level, sometimes you get more flexibility. The other thing I would have said is these views are going to mainly be your properties on the left sidebar.
Yeah.
There was also, because you used to be able to edit 2 or 3 of those. You may not have been able to show 10 on there, obviously.
So just a follow-up while you're looking for it. When you look at an associated record, so if I'm in a deal record or in a contact record and there's an associated, say I'm looking at a contact and there's a deal that's associated, would the same preview lines appear as well? Because it's very similar in that if you look at any contact that's got a deal or any other record associated, there's kind of that same like 2-line preview where there's just a couple of properties, and it'd be great to be able to decide what they are. It almost feels like HubSpot just decides what's the most useful for you, and I'm not really sure where it comes from.
So what's interesting is, and even across our clients, some of these screenshots, that's where I grabbed them. So some of these settings were legacy and then evolve. And then sometimes they've got different view displays, and the way my settings are ticked, because what you just saw may not be a holistic solution, because if I change those settings, so I think if you don't mind, let me just do a bit of sticky beaking and I'll see if we can nail that outcome for you and respond, unless you've already checked what's available online.
No, I haven't. So I looked at the board options and the view. Look, I don't want to take any more time than what's fair, so feel free to get back to me. That's totally fine.
Yeah, and I'm feeling sheepish because it's usually just the 101, but that options and edit card is where it's been, and I don't know if that's because
that's why I'm asking, because it's not so obvious anymore. Yeah.
And it looks like they've actually rescinded that functionality. So it's a good one. Thank you. You've stumped me, and I like that. And so let me learn something and come back to you with what we find.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks. Got it. Okay. So if you can hit, I'll just share my screen again. So if you go into your deals and then your record customization, and then you can see how customize your deal association cards. And then this is where, to the best ability, you should be able to.
I see. And so you can have 3. Okay, that's good. And so would this apply to like the same process, I'm guessing, for like custom objects, just for example?
I believe so.
Same spot, right?
Look, again, with custom objects, and forgive me, we've got a whole dev team, and they deeper in the tool than I am on that level. Yeah. But I'm pretty certain that at least if you're trying to customize the little custom object on the right sidebar, that you will be able, I'm pretty certain you can, in fact, I'm certain you can program those. But if you want to kind of open up then a custom object record, the Kanban style doesn't really apply outside of deals. So, but I think you'll have a level of functionality that match what you're seeing on a company contact deal record.
Yeah, it's what I mean is I think that preview that you've just changed, that deal association, is also going to appear in an associated record. So if I'm looking at a contact record and then I see a deal that's been associated with that contact, those same previews, those same 3 lines.
You saw how I could drop the menu and change what property I'm selecting of the 3 lines. Select the ones you want, and if custom objects are proper, because those I'm pretty sure are going to only be deal properties. They're not going to come pulling from a custom, because you'll associate a custom object to your deal.
Correct. So
unless you're running a workflow that mirrors your custom object information to a deal level or new property, and then you will be able to put them on a deal level that way, if that's what you need.
No, this has solved the problem. Thank you very much.
My pleasure then. I'm glad I could help. Awesome. Well, Adrian, Joanna, thanks so much. And for those watching, thank you. Adrian, any other questions? Sorry, how rude of me, I should ask.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Glenn.
No, magic. It's awesome to have you guys. For those watching, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your support and your advocacy as always. As mentioned to Adrian at the outset of the call, we have some exciting products we're going to be launching for the first time the second half of this year. So stay tuned for that. We love feedback. So you've got Nimrod's details. You've got my details in terms of the invitations that went out. Please share with us any feedback, any thoughts. The exciting thing is that because of your feedback, we've got a great lineup of future hugs for the year. We're going to try to squeeze 2 or 3 or 4 in. So stay tuned for those, sign up. And we look forward to the next one.
Thank you so much to the both of you for attending.
Have a great week.